everyone, this is Barbara, the Seashore Stitcher. And this is a day or two before January 1st, 2025. Welcome one and all, y'all. Today, I know I had said previously I didn't think that I would be back until I got further on Beloved Bunnies, or I finished Beloved Bunnies. But at the encouragement of my daughter, she said, Mom, I think you should do a 2025 wrap up, because not only is 2025 ending the year of 2025, but it is ending the first year of you on FlossTube, because I uploaded my first video on January 15th of 2025. So I went back in my records and I looked and it was January 15th. So we've pretty much completed a full year circle here on FlossTube and a calendar year. So she had the idea and encouraged me to go ahead and share the 2025 stitches that I shared on my channel that I did this year, or I finished this year. And then I'll tell you where I got them in case you're interested in any of them. And it's gonna kind of be like a year in review, y'all. Year in review, wrap up. Now, so we'll kind of do that to begin with. We'll just jump in and kind of look at the stitches that I stitched this year and that some of you stitched with me this year. And then we will talk about the future of this channel and any other things I think of in the in-between. So we'll go ahead and get started with the stitches of 2025. What you're about to see, now let me disclose first off that we're in a fairly small space, and I am not in the environment where I can display all the stitches that I've ever done. Okay, so I do switch out frames. So except for Emerald City, which some of y'all may recall was my first stitch that I ever shared on FlossTube. That was the first FlossTube I ever did. That is professionally framed and was a gift to me from, the framing was a gift to me from my husband and my daughter. So that is professionally framed. Otherwise, I paint frames, I reutilize frames, I pop stitches in and out of frames as I feel like it. And since we've moved several times in the last few years. Our stuff's been in storage a couple times. I don't have the bulkiness and the heaviness of moving a lot of frames, because I'm sure some of y'all know they can get heavy the more frames that you have. So let me disclose that first and foremost. The stitches that you're going to see, some of them are in a protective covering. Now you may be like, well, Barbara, like, how do you do that? I'm going to tell you what I do to protect my stitches in between showtime, okay, when they're on my wall or they're on display. They're normally kept in a plastic tote or in one of my craft drawers until I get ready to switch them out. Today, they're all going to be outside of the frame except a few of them, so we can better see them. I put my stitches, I board them just like I'm putting them in the frame, but to store them, I slide them in scrapbook acid-free pages. So this is what this is. This is a 12 by 12. So you'll see in a moment what I'm talking about. I don't utilize this, of course. Of course, my stitches are on the back. They're back boarded. They're boarded just like I can just pop them in the frame. But I will put them in because those scrapbook pages, these are acid free. I will slide it in here and then I will just, you know, fold the plastic around the project and just kind of tape it down in the back. So that is what you're about to see. So you might get some reflection because I'm not going to take them out of the plastic coverings to share them today. And I have stuff in frames because, like I said, we move around a lot, we rent, we don't have control over a lot of our environmental factors. And like I said, I've had stuff in storage, and that always works for me. So it kind of protects them from dust, dirt, grime, and all that stuff. And plus I can pop them in a frame if the frame doesn't have the glass, and I don't have to worry about it getting dirty while it's on the wall or being on display in my home. Okay, so disclosure time over. So I hope that made sense. I'll try not to make this very long, so y'all don't get bored. So I kind of put this into little groups. So what do we want to start with? Let's go ahead and start with the free patterns. I'm not going to do it in a timeline progression. I'm going to do it in groups. So I have like a group of Reolas that I stitched and shared this year, a group of the free patterns that I shared this year, group of Antique Pattern Library, and group of other. So that's kind of where we're at on that. Do I have all my whips? I have, okay, whips. They're not whips, they're done, y'all. Y'all know. All right, let's go. First, we're gonna start with the free patterns that I shared. The other thing that I do when I put them in the plastic and I put them away in a drawer is I'll write on the back what it was, where I got it, the year that I stitched it, and any notes that I wanted to say about the piece. So we'll go ahead and start with our Antique Pattern Library stitches. Are y'all straight? And Barbara, I apologize, y'all. I feel like I'm not straight. Am I straight? I got my lamps back here. These are my aunts. I just came in possession of these again after many, many years. They weren't mine. They were belonged to another member of my family. And my aunt was is a very gifted stained glass artist. So that's the two new items you're seeing behind me. Of course, we'll go ahead and start with Antique Pattern Library. I think the first thing that I ever stitched and shared from Antique Pattern Library, and those of you that have been here before, I do have a video somewhere on this channel called Antique Pattern Library Walkthrough. Antique Pattern Library has free and public domain common, what is it called? Common something, free patterns basically on their website that are okay to go into the public domain, if that makes sense. So if you've never been to Antique Pattern Library, go fall down that rabbit hole someday. But they have all kinds of different artistry and fiber arts things that you can find that those who went before us stitched and had, you know, in their homes and their projects. So like the old work baskets are on there. A lot of things have been converted into cross stitch patterns or beadwork patterns from Antique Berlin Woolworks. I'm not going to go into detail about that here, but I absolutely adore Antique Pattern Library. And the first one that I ever stitched and shared with y'all was a butterfly. It's just called MTH02 Butterfly, but I think I called it Beautiful Butterfly or something. So that was the only motif on the Antique Pattern Library website. I added the words, remember, change can be beautiful. So I added the words and the little border around the butterfly. So this is stitched exactly as called for in that pattern. Again, this is just called Butterfly, I think, on Antique Pattern Library. So I'm not sure if I'm going to hold them up, y'all, or maybe I'll insert pictures, but I have so many it'll take me forever to edit the video and then have to show pictures. So maybe I'll do it like this. So yes, that was the first Antique Pattern Library one that I shared with y'all, and that came out to be like a 5x5 and fit in a 5x5. It fits in a 5x5 frame. But this is what I'm saying when I say it's already boarded. So I've already got it on my backboard, my board, and of course it's in my little scrapbook non-acidic sleeve, and that way if I want to pop this out like in the spring, or if I need some words of encouragement, I can pop that in my little 5x5 frame and set it out somewhere. So that was the first thing that I shared from Antique Pattern Library. We're going to go right to left, y'all, right to left. The next thing that we stitched from Antique Pattern Library, I believe, if I'm remembering right, is Bouquet with rose, violet, and white flower. This was KTL016. And that's what this one looks like. And I think this one I have in a 5x7 frame. So y'all may remember that one. Antique Pattern Library, that's using just the called for colors on a 14 count, like sepia pre-printed. I think it's like a Charles Craft or a Zweigert pre-printed fabric that I got at like Hobby Lobby. The next Antique Pattern Library I believe I did was the Henry Cohen chickens, y'all. And this one I think is part of the Henrik Cohen. I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's German, I think. From Berlin, and it's just number 2682 chickens on Antique Pattern Library. I did it as called for on a 14 count white, and I put it, of course, in the y'all, I don't know, in the put a little green frame on it. So y'all might remember that one. I think that's just a 6x6. Fits in a 6x6 frame if I remember right. And then last but not least, a couple of y'all went on this rabbit hole with me. I believe Miss Karen went on this stitch along with me. Was what turned into Shirley and Tilly. It is called Girl Herding Cow on Antique Pattern Library. I did not want to incorporate the whip. And so I put flowers on her hand, but as I stitched it, like I had a whole story of where this stitch took me. It turned into Shirley Temple and her cow Tilly, her pet cow Tilly that Tillamook, the school children of Tillamook, Oregon gave to her. And so I renamed it Shirley and Tilly. Now this pattern, Antique Pattern Library, if you remember, is the only pattern I ever done where I struggled a little bit with the color. It didn't translate well into a cross stitch pattern, this part of the pattern. So I had already put in the black, and it was going to be really hard to frog out. So I kind of had to just go with it. If I remember right, Miss Karen, our stitchy friend Karen, saw that from the get-go, that it wasn't going to look smooth and precise. And she went ahead and adapted a color into the dress from the get-go that looked like blended a little more with that pattern. I took the whip out of her hands and put in yellow cow slips because I read a poem. I remembered a poem years ago that I liked, and I incorporated the flowers from that poem of which cows could eat. And so that Antique Pattern Library stitch right there. And I think that does it for our Antique Pattern Library stitches. Next we'll just go, so all those patterns are free on Antique Pattern Library. Next we'll go to just the free patterns that I found and shared with you throughout the year. The first one, I think, I don't remember, but I may be forgetting some. Oh, Antique Pattern Library, I did forget. I also did the 3 ladybugs on 3 leaves, and I turned that into a photo album. I used that on the front of a photo album. I do not have that with me. It's in a box somewhere, and I'll try to remember to put a picture of it right here. And I think I added the words Sunshine Wishes, Ladybug Kisses, and I turned that into a photo. I got a photo album from the thrift store for like $1, and then I made a photo album utilizing that stitch. So I'll try to remember to put a picture right here, and that will do it for Antique Pattern Library. Now we're on to the free patterns that I shared with y'all. The first one, of course, is going to be Autumn Acorn by the Cricket Collection. This was a complimentary pattern that is still up on their website, even though the website doesn't appear to be maintained anymore. I did make a few little changes to this. I added some bead work right through here, some ginger beads that I had left over from a Mill Hill kit. I think it was Into the Woods a few years ago. So I did it on 14 count pre-printed. Again, like this, excuse me, they're like the sepia fabric. I think I used the same fabric for the Antique Pattern Library flowers. Most of what you're going to see, if you're new here, I stitch on 14 count Aida most of the time. So if I forget to say that, just know that's probably what you're looking at is a 14 count. You could do it on anything you want though. And if y'all remember, I did Bob Ross this because I somehow picked up the wrong color. And so that's not the same color brown as the rest, but that's okay because acorns are not conform in color. Nature is not conformed in her beauty. So I left it. I didn't take it out. I was like, you really can't tell when it's in a frame and it's sitting somewhere, and I left it. So Cricut Collection freebie complimentary patterns still on their website if you're interested in that. The next one was Harvest Time from Sullivan's Floss, of course. Let's see. I might need to just move my chair. This is called Harvest Time. This is on the Sullivan's Floss website. I think I shared that website on a video called Free Fall Smalls, y'all, or something like that. We went to the Sullivan's website and we kind of looked at all the free patterns they have on the Sullivan's Floss website, which is a floss from the United States, but I can't find that floss in my area. So unless I want to order it, like I can't walk in anywhere here and get Sullivan's Floss. So I did the DMC conversions on this, and I think it turned out very pretty and very beautiful. So that is Harvest Time from Sullivan's Floss. Let me see if I can move my chair a little bit so that we're offset more better. More better, y'all. Okay, hopefully that will be better. I had to move my whole little setup, y'all. Okay, so the next free pattern that we stitched, I have not finished this, but I went ahead and boarded it and put it in a sleeve for today's purposes. It's not permanent, as you can tell, like the other ones. This was Roly Poly Scarecrow by Kreinik. And Kreinik has a lot of free patterns still on their website. I did do color conversions on this one, and I had cute little buttons that I put on Roly Poly Scarecrow. I have an idea of how I want to finish Roly Poly Scarecrow, but I just haven't sat down and like kind of sketched that out and done it. So I just kind of put him in this for today so y'all could see. But if you remember Kreinik, of course Kreinik, the company sold to another company called Rainbow Gallery. Kreinik used to be in West Virginia. They retired, they closed the factory. A company called Rainbow Gallery bought all the equipment and the company basically and had to move it to California where they are. And I don't know if production has picked up or how easy it is to get now. Last time I looked, like I still couldn't find where to get the Kreinik colors at. But instead of Kreinik, you could just always use your DMC metallics. You could just substitute that if you wanted. But again, Roly Poly Scarecrow was one of many little Roly Poly Scarecrows. There was a Santa Roly Poly Scarecrow. I think is there an Easter Bunny Roly Poly? I don't remember. But if you're looking for some really cute little patterns to do for any season or any holiday, go over to Kreinik because they kindly left their original website up. And you can just go under the season. I think I showed it in that video. You can go under the season that you want to stitch something up under. And they have some really, really pretty patterns on the Kreinik site. I think I looked the other day and I think there's 2 Valentine freebies on there. So if you want to do a Valentine freebie, I think there's 2. There's one with 2 cats, and I think there's one that's like a heart and it's little motifs that make up the heart. If I can find the pictures, I'll insert them here, but that is from Kreinik free pattern. that one day I'll sit down and I'll fully finish that one. But he could be displayed just like that. Okay, and the next pattern that we did, that we went on a journey together, of course, was the Cricut collection again. And it's Nevermore. So Nevermore, of course, I have framed. I made this frame. I painted it. I painted the buttons and made them kind of look like little casket knobs. Of course, Quoth the Raven. I think Miss Brenda, Stitchy Friend Brenda, went on the journey with me with Nevermore. This is a freebie pattern, but I completely converted all those colors. And I added the moon, and I added some different motifs, and I added the date of when the poem was written, and I added the moon with, I kind of made it into like a little clock where the hands kind of point at midnight. So I finished that one, and then I printed out the poem on scrapbook paper, acid-free scrapbook paper. I kind of printed out the poem, and I made a mat utilizing the words of the poem for Quote the Raven by the Cricut collection. That is, I think that's actually the pattern's name is Quote the Raven. I always call it Nevermore. But so we went on that one. That's a freebie pattern. This one is on my Pinterest. The pattern itself is pinned on my Pinterest account. If you're new here, my Pinterest is somewhere on here. I do not, and I'll talk about that in a minute at the end of the video, but I do not check my Pinterest very often. So I just want to, while that's in my head, say that. But if I had a freebie pattern that came from Pinterest, or a freebie pattern from Antique Pattern Library, or freebie pattern that I know where it's from and I could link to it, I have a picture on my Pinterest account and then where it's from, and or the link of how to get the pattern. I hope that makes sense too if you're new. So that, of course, is my Ode to Poe, which took me down a whole nother rabbit hole of, this was also a free pattern through Night Spirit Studios. It was called Isolated Bat. I think it was released during the time that we speak not of. And it was a freebie complimentary pattern that they put out during that time. I ran across it while I was stitching Edgar Allan, the Ode to Poe. And it just sent me down a whole poetry. I used to be quite the poet connoisseur, and it sent me back down that whole rabbit hole. And my favorite poet is Byron. I think I shared with y'all is Lord Byron. He's a scoundrel, but I love his poet. I love him as a poet. And but he had a doctor called Dr. Polidori, who had a tragic life, by the way. But anyway, he is really the father of the vampire as we see the vampire in fiction today. That book did not do well when Dr. Polidori was alive, but he really is the first one that put into black and white print a story about a vampire. And so when I saw Isolated Bat by Night Spirit Studios, I sewed it exactly as called for on black, which was a challenge for me with my eyeballs. But I inserted petite blood red beads for the roses. I took a plain wooden frame and wrapped it with black satin to mimic the satin inside of a coffin. And I refer to this as Dr. Polidori, or the Polidori stitch, in honor of Dr. Polidori. I used the red beads because I originally wanted to use the red beads on Ode to Poe, Nevermore. And I wanted to do the words and the red beads. That was the original plan, y'all. And I got some of those red beads in there, and it did not work with the color palette. It just did not work right. So when I saw Isolated Bat, it was perfect for that. So that is what that is. That is Dr. Polidori, otherwise known as Isolated Bat, from Night Spirit Studios. I believe this complimentary pattern is still on her website if you are interested in that. I was probably late on the train on that. I know a lot of y'all had already stitched that. My board fell, y'all. Y'all know. Y'all know. I'm gonna drop stuff and mess stuff up. Y'all know it. Wouldn't be the Seashore Stitcher if it didn't. So that's all the free patterns that I think I stitched this year and shared with y'all this year. I'll try to put them below. Sometimes I run out of space. I'll try to put the patterns below, or if you want to know a certain pattern, then just ask in the comments and I'll tell you where you can get it. The next group of stitches that I did this year, first year on Flosstube and in the year 2025, y'all know I'm a very inspirational stitcher. If you're new here, I'm a very inspirational stitcher. And I stitch things that remind me of people, places, experiences, or nature around me. This one I called the Golden Egg, and it was really called the Golden Egg. And it was in a Jill Oxton magazine, which is an Australian magazine. It was issue 54. I no longer have those magazines. I have passed those magazines forward. But there was a sister stitch to this where it was a lamb under a mushroom. But I went to the store back in, I want to say, April or May, back when you couldn't get eggs. And if you could get eggs, you had to take out your credit card. Because I remember my daughter and I going on the Great Egg Adventure one day, and we couldn't find eggs here. Like, we'd been to BJ's, we've been to Sam's, we've been to Kroger. Like, nobody had eggs, and if they had eggs, you can only get 2. It was just a mess. Y'all remember that. If you're in the United States, y'all remember that. And finally, we got to Walmart, and the gentleman was pulling out a pallet of eggs, and they were $12 a carton for 12 eggs. And I was like, my daughter came around the corner. She's like, good news, Mom, is they have eggs. Bad news, he's bringing them out. Bad news is they're $12 a carton. And I was like, as my granny would say, I fell right out, feet up toward the heavens. I fell right out, and I said, okay, we'll just get 2 cartons. We're gonna ration the eggs. Like we're rationing sugar in World War II or something. But I happened to be flipping through the Jill Oxton magazines one night, and I came across the Golden Egg. And in this stitch, it wasn't, I can't remember if it called for Kreinik or not, but I ended up just doing like a gold DMC metallic gold for the egg. So if you're interested in stitching this, I don't know. You would have to go see. So this is a memory of the Great Egg debacle of 2025. And I framed it using, again, scrapbook paper that's metallic gold. So it's just metallic gold scrapbook paper. And I did it on the blue. If I had to go back, I don't know that I would have done it on the blue. But at the time, it didn't, it wasn't in my head to do like a metallic gold frame, matte. So I think I would have done, but I had this blue just hanging around and I didn't know what to do with the blue. So I said, oh, this will look awesome on the blue. But then I wanted the gold. So I'm not sure how the gold matte goes with that. But I love it just the same. I'll put a little bow on Clara Cowl there, and in memory of the Great Egg debacle of 2025. So again, this is Jill Oxton, Australian magazine, Cross Stitch and Beading, issue number 54. It may be out there in the wild, like on eBay or something like that. And I did run across, I don't know if I said this at the time, but I did run across on the webs. If you Google Jill Oxton, there is a website that's kind of dedicated to her, and it seems to be like a chat room or some type of blog where people are in there talking back and forth about Jill Oxton cross stitch patterns from the 80s and 90s or whatever. And some people had posted some of those patterns in that blog. I can't remember where but I was trying to find like more of her patterns. I was trying to see if I could download some more of her patterns from different issues. I think I had issue like 42 through 54 at the time. I had gotten at the Goodwill bins for $0.25. But like I said, I tried to stitch a couple patterns out there. So we'll talk about my failures of 2025 in a minute. But I had a failure that came from one of those magazines. So again, it's an Australian magazine from Australia down under. The next thing I stitched was, oh yes, the Nashville Trunk Show. I don't do all that and like buy patterns and go online and do all that stuff. I'm not a big haul person. Most of you that are here already know that. I get most of my patterns free, thrift stores, vintage books, vintage magazines. I like to adapt patterns. I like to design little patterns sometimes. This one, though, was an exception because my daughter and husband had gone up to Williamsburg for the day, and we had gone to Liberty Hill Needleworks in Williamsburg, Virginia, and she actually had tables laid out from the Nashville show. So she had her trunk show laid out on different tables. And I had never personally heard of fine frog stitching before. And right about that time, we had a mama duck that was on the nest out here at our local neighborhood pond. And she was on the nest waiting for baby ducklings. And I'm always stitch something while the baby ducklings are growing up in the pond, because usually I have to assist in some way, me and the local rehab ladies. But anyway, it's a different story. I had seen this little duck, fine frog stitching, came out in April, and I think it was part of some type of release because it had April written under this, but she was the fine frog stitching. This was her contribution to whatever that stitch along was, or whatever that the patterns of this of 2025 year were. And she designed this one. Fine frog stitching, April duck. I did not put April on here, of course. I just left that off. And this is in honor of the Dora ducklings that were born March 20th of 2025. I have it written back here. And they were the original brood of ducklings that we had at our local pond. There was 11 of them, and we lost all 11 of them within like a week. So none of those baby ducklings grew up, but I stitched this at the time while we were waiting for Nessie. We named the neighborhood duck Nessie and Lomond, and I stitched that while waiting for that brood to. I'd look out there every day to see if they were out there. But I just kind of added the little bow tie on there, and of course I back stitched her. No back stitching was called for in that pattern. But if you've been here before, you know I love to back stitch. I'm one of those weird people that enjoys back stitching. And so I back stitch things when it doesn't ask you to back stitch things. But there she is. There's kind of, so this was stitched in honor of Nessie and the Dora ducklings, the brood of Dora ducklings. Now they didn't live to be adults, but Nessie did get back on the same nest, which was odd. But about 2 or 3 weeks after the original brood perished, went missing, was no longer amongst us, she got back on the same nest. And so at that point, I started stitching Chick Girl from Hummel Book, 1984. It was released in 1984. I have 2 Hummel books now, but I picked out this one to stitch while Nessie was waiting her second brood of ducklings. And so every day I would go out there and check her, and I'd look around and see if the baby ducklings were there, and then I would come in and I would stitch Chick Girl from the 1984 booklet. This book number 5089. So if you're looking, Authentic Hummel Book 5089, 1984. That brood, she had 9 out of that brood that were born. I documented them as the Amorous brood, and all 9 of them lived. Amorous meant promised by God. So all 9 of the Amherst brood made it to adulthood. So that was stitched in honor of them. And I do have one of their little duck feathers back here that was on the ground one day. I picked it up and I put it in here as a memory to the Amherst brood. They did return. There's 3 or 4 that did return the other day during the ice. We had ice where the fountains froze over. And it was kind of funny because I hadn't seen them in a while. And I saw them fly in. And I was like, oh, some ducks are here. I haven't seen them in a while. And it was kind of funny because they went to land on the water, but the water was ice. And they literally like slid across the pond. And then they kind of stood up and were like walking around. I'll put some footage here. It was so funny. Like they were picking their feet up and they were like walking around on the ice and looking around like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden, you know, I have a phrase that I always call them with. Hey, you guys, like the electric company. And they recognized that because I would call them, I think I told y'all before, I called them to a certain corner we kind of trained them to go to a certain corner because the majority of the time, some of them need to go to rescue or rehab, and we couldn't catch them in this large neighborhood pond. And it was a way to protect them from the raptors. Nature's going to be nature, of course, but I won't get into that all here. But some of them still recognize that phrase. And there were 2 that day that recognized that phrase and kind of started coming toward me like, what is this? What's wrong with the water? So that was kind of funny. The next thing that I stitched was nesting hen because I just like chickens, y'all. And this was, can't remember, Just Country cross stitch, I think, 1988 magazine. It was nesting hens. This was one of 3 that was released. I did not stitch the other 2, but I stitched this one from that magazine. Like I said, 1988. I have seen all 3 of these together. Like one was released in like June, another one July, another one August or whatever. You know how they do that. I have seen all 3 of these patterns released. I don't know if it's legal or not. I don't know. But all 3 of those patterns can be purchased together on Etsy. So if you go on Etsy and you put in nesting hens, I believe all 3 of those patterns come up and you can purchase all 3 of those patterns if you want to stitch all 3 of them, or if you just want to stitch this one. I left out the border, and I left out like the stems and the sticks on the flowers. I just didn't like how they looked, so I left them off. But other than that, and of course I backstitched it. I don't think it had some backstitching in it, but I backstitched a lot more than it called for, because y'all know me. Okay, so there's that. The next thing was Hello Pumpkin. This was by a Japanese designer. It was in the 2023 issue, Halloween issue of Just Cross Stitch. See how I write that on there, y'all? And it was designer Nayako Kudo. I don't know if I said that right, but it's Hello Pumpkin. And so that slid down a little bit. But anyway, we stitched that one. I stitched that one rather. I had a lot of fun with that. I really enjoyed doing the little motifs on that. It was really satisfying just to be able to stitch a little motif. And it's like you could finish 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. You could completely stitch something in one sitting, like even if it was like a little motif. So I got a lot of satisfaction out of that one. So I think I learned about myself that I really would probably enjoy more patterns that incorporate a lot of motifs, where I can just stitch little motifs and then you feel like you finished it for the whole night. I mean, you finished something that night of stitching, or that day of stitching for y'all probably. The last thing, I actually shared this, I think, in my first floss tube as well. It was Owl Forest. I think I told y'all I had never done, my glasses are glaring. We're gonna lose light here in a minute, y'all. I don't know. Let me go this way and try to help it. I told y'all I really like Al Forrest patterns, and I had never done a stitch along before, and I was going to do the Al Forrest 2025 stitch along. And so I had started January. I was in the midst of doing January, and it was going to be December for us because Santa Claus is on the Al Forrest January first installment, because their Eastern Orthodox holiday is January 6th and 7th, I think. So that's why their Santa Claus and kind of the Christmas scene appears on January instead of December. But I had started stitching that one, and then I had started stitching February, which had ice skaters on it. That one became an abandoned WIP because I was going to do my first stitch along ever, but that's when here in the United States, and I think there's some other people, we lost a lot of our talented ice skaters in a plane crash. And so I was no longer inspired to stitch that. It was just sad to me every time that I picked it up. So I did not finish the stitch along for Al Forrest this year. So my first stitch along was a fail, but they had the free pattern on there, the polar bear family, and you can get a grizzly bear family. For free. And there are free patterns on Al Forrest. They have some beautiful, beautiful patterns. Most of you already probably know that. But this one I think had 6 polar bears, or you can do 6 grizzly bears. I had the idea of stitching them all separate and hanging them like they're photos on a wall at Christmas. I didn't get around to stitching any more of them this year. This one I had actually already started, and I think, if I remember right, I shared it in my first floss tube in January of 2025 that I was working on it. And then something happened and it got put in a drawer and I forgot about it. And like, I didn't have that much more to do on it. I don't remember, like I had to finish this side and maybe the back stitching. I don't remember, but I came across it sometime, I think it was probably August or September. I think when I was doing Palladori, the isolated bat, I came across this and I was like, okay, I'm going to finish this. Like, how did I forget about this? Like, I stuck it in a drawer and then I forgot about it. And I finished it, and then this is just a wooden dollar store frame. And I painted it white to look like a snowflake. And so that is the first of maybe 6 members of that family on Al Forrest. I think I did change the coat colors. I think I changed them a little bit, and then I added some French knots or French knots. I think I had put beads on it originally and the beads didn't look right and I took the beads off. But that was my idea with this, is I was going to get different frames and paint them all white and stitch each of the polar bears or grizzly bears alone. And that way at Christmas you could kind of hang them, or for me, winter holiday, over the winter you could hang them like they're portraits of the polar bear family. But I haven't stitched anymore, but I did finish that, find and finish and paint that frame and get that totally done this year. Okay, we'll go to the Reolas next. In January, I did an unboxing of the Reolas gift box. I did not do that this year because of the situation that we have with the shipping and the tariffs and everything in the country that I'm in. And Reolas had stopped shipping to the United States for a while. They've now restarted, but I didn't get the box this year because of that, unfortunately. But last year I did get the gift box, which has 5 random Reolas kits in it, and the estuary was one of those kits. I finished this back over the summer. It took me a while to like get it boarded and FFO'd. This lives in a white frame that is in use somewhere else right now. But I stitched this because this greatly, greatly reminded me of our National Wildlife Refuge here in my area, Back Bay. It's called Back Bay. And this is like the spitting image of one part of the trail down West Dyke Trail, where you come around and you literally see this this in real life. Like it's insane. But when this was in a frame, I think I showed it in a live that I did. It reminds me of a Bob Ross painting. So it completely reminds me of a Bob Ross painting. This one, I think I had said I would not recommend this for newbie Riolis stitchers. This was a woolen acrylic kit. I did Bob Ross it at one point, y'all, if y'all remember. There's a lot of combo colors in this one. A lot of 2 and 3, 3 and 5, 5 and 7, 7 and 9, 8 and 9, 1 and 3. Like just about this whole pattern was combo colored, and there was a lot of confetti in it. I struggled with the Infinite Skies of Riolis at one point. I didn't think I was ever going to finish that blue sky. And then at some point I comboed the colors wrong for the clouds. So I was supposed to be doing, I don't know, 1 and 3, and I did 2 and 3, and it has some yellow right there. It's got like a yellowish tint, but a Bob Rossed it, y'all. I said it was sun rays coming through the clouds. And so this was started and finished in 2025 as well. The Estuary. I don't know that it's available through Riolis website anymore, but you can probably find it out there in the wild somewhere. The second one was not completely stitched in 2025. This was actually started in 2024 before I started Flosstube. I think I might have showed this in my first Flosstube as well. It's Girl with Ducklings by Riolis. This one was stitched for 2024 in honor of the Woolly Bullies, which was the duck brood that was at our neighborhood pond in 2023 or 2024. That's what I called them, was the Woolly Bullies. And this was stitched while they were growing up at our neighborhood pond. Let me see. It's Girl with Ducklings. I don't have the kit number on here. This one actually saw, you couldn't find it for a long time. I actually saw this one go back up on the Riolis Amazon storefront in the United States anyway. I think at Christmas for like $21 or $23 or something. And I had not seen Riolis or anyone else have this pattern at this kit in a hot minute. So when I bought it, I got it for like $19 a couple years ago because, and then it did not get listed again. So if you're interested in this one is in a 12 by 12 frame, I believe. I did lose the ribbons. If you've been here for a while, y'all probably remember there's supposed to be some ribbon work in her hat. I lost the ribbons somewhere along the stitch, and I found them like a couple months ago, but I don't need them now. So I didn't have the ribbon for her hat and the ribbon for the basket, but I just kind of made my own ribbon for the basket and put it on there. And so that is Girl with Ducklings, Riolis. So it might be out there, like I said, in the wilds somewhere. The estuary is an 11 by 14, and that's a full coverage. Like there's not one single empty block on that one. But that one's 11 by 4, will fit in an 11 by 14 frame. Okay, and the next Riolis that I did is the Farm Piglet. This is kit number 1523. Girl with Ducklings is also woolen acrylic thread. The Farm Piglet is also woolen acrylic thread. Riolis has 2 different kits. You can get woolen acrylic threads, which if you've been here before, you know I absolutely adore and absolutely love. And they also have stranded cotton kits that utilize Anchor, and they also have kits that utilize both. But anyway, the next thing that I shared, I think back in the spring, was the Farm Piglet. And the more that I stitched on this, the more it reminded me of Charlotte's Web and Wilbur. So I called him Wilbur, and to represent Charlotte, I didn't have like a spider or anything. I didn't know how to incorporate Charlotte, the spider, into this stitch since he became Wilbur to me, and this was the farm. So I instead went to one of my books. I think it might have been 2001 Cross Stitch Motif book. It might have been that one. And I found writing that looked kind of spider writing to me, like spider writing. And what I did is I wrote the 4 words that Charlotte spun into her web, and in the order that she spun them. So humble, some pig, terrific, and radiant. And I just did that on really stiff black Aida, and kind of just reminded me of swirly curly Q spider writing, and I put that on each side. So that is woolen acrylic thread, and then of course I did DMC, I think it was B5200 for the Charlotte's spider writing. All right, we're down to the last of the shares. The next thing I shared in the spring was a piece that I wanted. I was on the hunt for something that represented the Waltons, the show of the Waltons, because like I said, I'm from Virginia, and Earl Hamner is from Virginia, and if you don't know who he is the John Boy Walton in real life. And I had met Earl Hamner before he passed away, and he was a very pleasant man, and I have signatures from him and his sisters, and I was on the hunt for something. I was inspired. I had watched one of my favorite Walton episodes ever, I think, where they were going to tear down, I think it was the Whitlow house or the Willett house. I always say it wrong, but anyway. There's a stained glass window in that episode that Grandpa takes out of the house and puts in him and Grandma Walton's bedroom. And I had been on the hunt for anything to stitch concerning the Waltons, and I really hadn't found anything out there other than like stick people that represented the family or something like that, like the little. And so I designed my own and I stitched my own. And so that is the window. I designed that after the window in that episode. So I'll try to find a picture of the actual window and put it here. The actual window from the house on the set of the Waltons was actually saved, and it was in a bed and breakfast up in Schuyler, Virginia. That bed and breakfast closed a few years ago, so I don't know if the window's still in that home or not. I haven't been back up there to the mountains in quite a while. But that house is now the actual Hamner house, or the actual Walton's house in real life, is now a private residence, and they're not, it's not open for tours, or it's not a bed and breakfast, and they're not, you can't go in the yard, and it's a private residence now. So I'm not sure if that window still exists or not, but I had kind of designed that and stitched that in honor of one of my favorite authors, Earl Hamner, and the show that he created, The Waltons. The next thing I think I shared at one point was mental health. I did a live on October 10th for Mental Health Day. I was thinking a lot about mental health at that time. And we were hearing an owl, which is odd because I'm in the middle of like a gazillion million people, but they've torn down so many trees in my area, the birds really don't have a lot of places left to go. So they've been displaced, and they're just kind of everywhere. I was thinking one night, like, the loneliest thing that you'll ever hear for me in the darkness on a dark, dark night is the lone hoot of an owl, and how lonely but somehow beautiful that is. And it had inspired me to design Moon Wishes, Owl Kisses. And so I did the green for mental health. I think the color for mental health, like if you were doing a ribbon or something's green. And I had just kind of put like little rose, kind of an ode to roses, like there's always hope, like the beauty of a rose in the wings. And then I just did kind of the blue moon. So I had designed that, and I had kind of stitched that, and I did, I think 5 people, I did do a little drawing for that pattern, and 5 people put in for it, and then I gave away that pattern. And then the next thing that I designed and stitched this year was an ode to the Philippines and the parals, which are like their Christmas lanterns in the Philippines. They're called parals, P-A-R-O-L, from Pampanga. Like I had stated before, my husband was born and raised, well, he wasn't born in the Philippines, but he was raised in the Philippines primarily. And my mother-in-law's from the Philippines. And you don't see a lot of Filipino represented stitches out there. I know Bella Filipina is out there now. So he has, you know, he does the fancy ladies. But nothing like smaller, like just an ode, smaller stitches as an ode to the Philippines. So I designed and stitched that not too long ago. We are starting to lose some light, y'all. So we're gonna, that wraps up the stitches of 2025. All right, everyone. We're gonna pick up here a little later in the day than the first part of the video. So we had just finished wrapping up the stitches of 2025. I just wanted to, the next thing on my list, so check, year in review, check. And the next thing on my list, I just want to thank everyone that went on this wild ride, first year of FlossTube with me in 2025. I had a lot of fun. I stitched a lot of cool things, met a lot of cool people, and enjoyed sharing it all with all of y'all out there along the way. Future of this channel. Since I'm going to be probably just working, like I mentioned before, I'm taking just those whips, those 4 whips into the new year with me. And because I'm probably going to be pretty monogamous to those whips. Those of you who have been here before, you already know I never really have more than 4 or 5 whips at a time anyway. But they're larger whips, so it's not like I'm doing like littler or smaller stitches. All the whips that I'm taking with me into 2026, excuse me, are larger whips. So I'm not gonna have as much material and things to share with you as I normally have in 2025. In 2025, we did a lot of cool things. I visited a lot of different websites, shared a lot of free patterns with y'all. We learned about Antique Pattern Library. We did some training tutorials on Reolist. We did a lot of that type of thing. We don't need to do that in 2026 because they're log checked and in the books. So I will probably not be uploading as often as I did in 2025. I will probably only upload when if I start something new, or if I finish something, or if it's been an inordinate, sound it out, Barbara, I know you can, inordinately long amount of time. So lately I've been posting probably like every 3 weeks or so. So it may be down to like once a month, just depending on my progress on one of those 4 whips. I'm still being monogamous to Beloved Bunnies right now. I have been monogamous since the first stitches that I put in it, which was on camera when we opened and took a look at it. So that's about it, y'all. 2025. My daughter did a couple videos with me this year. If anyone remembers or watched those, she started cross stitching this year in 2025. Excuse me. She finished 2 projects this year. I'll put pictures here. One was out of the Cherished Teddies, I think it's Joan Elliott book from like 1980s or the 1990s. The little teddy bear here. And this one is a game character that she designed and stitched herself. So she just jumped in the deep end of the pool, like I told y'all before earlier in the year. So she designed that and stitched this one. this year. I think she's currently working on King Tut. And she still has Odin's Hammer that she's working on that she had shared. I think in the first floss tube she came to with me. That whip was downloaded from Etsy, and the pattern is not real coherent or easy to read. I don't think it was sample stitched. Let's put it that way. I don't think anyone stitched it before. They just threw the pattern out there. So she kind of has to fix that pattern as she goes. So that's a little slower stitching for her. But that is it, y'all. 2025 is in the books. I hope that y'all enjoyed the ride. I hope, like I said, I hope the new year brings y'all many blessings of joy, good health, and peace. Thank you for visiting with me today. Like I said, I wasn't going to do this, but at the encouragement of my daughter, I decided to go ahead and do it. So, 2025, done. That's a wrap in the books, y'all. So until we meet again, whenever that may be, may peace be with you. And you know what to do. Stitch it and sprinkle it with love. Bye.